Hey, change makers and visionaries. This is ReImagining Community, where we dive deep into the stories of leaders who are reshaping the world, one community at a time. I'm your host, Garland Fuller, and every episode is a radical act of connection. We're not just talking about change, we're breaking down how real people are creating it right here, right now. This podcast is more than conversations. It's a bridge where we are sharing stories that offer insight and inspiration. Whether you're an entrepreneur, consultant, volunteer, artist, or an organizational leader, this is your space to listen and learn. This is your call to create impact in the communities you hold dear and that hold you up. Let's reimagine what's possible together.
Welcome back to ReImagining Community. My name is Garland Fuller. I have the lovely Marissa Garza with me.
Hello, hello.
Hello, hello. We are wrapping up our first season of ReImagining Community.
Yeah.
This has been a whirlwind. We have been reflecting on the inertia that it takes to lift these things, and then the release. That's my word, remember? The release of these things. And then not knowing how they will be received, what's going to come from them, and just, I think, the joy of doing them. So I just want to thank you for this, just all that you've done, not only with me, but for me in terms of this endeavor, bringing this back into my life. I feel like it's been a missing space. And so to have it back has just been fantastic. So I'm going to give you your flowers.
Thank you, Garland. And I will return them as well. I will keep some, I will receive them. But then I will also, there's no crying in podcasting. It's been an honor and a privilege to be behind the scenes on this project and really just hear all the stories that were coming out and how you were able to get those stories out of people. And your genuine curiosity really ignited that in me as well. So I really appreciate it. It was great to collaborate on this. I feel like we both brought something and it was great to make this happen. So
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. So we're going to take a moment to look through some of these episodes. And I think for me, when I look back at this season, it's really the impetus for me even starting this was in getting stories of leaders, of people who are doing extraordinary things in the work that they do. Also, I think in this time, we keep hearing community where you should lean into in times of uncertainty, in times of transition, in times of, dare I say, calamity and chaos. Yeah. And so it's been wonderful. Dare I say, every day is a new day. You wake up, you're not sure what you're going to see, hear, experience. Yeah. Community has, I think, a whole new meaning now than it maybe did before when we started this. Although I feel like when you live in community or you understand the importance of it, it holds a special place, particularly in times like this. I've enjoyed, I think, hearing how people are creating those areas for themselves, how they also decided to stand up and be leaders in these spaces. And Kim kicking off was amazing because strong history with the African American real estate professionals of Los Angeles. And that, I think, is what even started me on this journey. So if you haven't listened to that episode, definitely go back because there's some good stuff there.
Yeah, I learned a lot from that episode as well. And it was just great to just see both of you being leaders in your community and also teaching me a lot about, I am a real estate outsider. I have not worked in the real estate industry. I have not really coordinated or talked to people. Like, I haven't had a real estate transaction. So when it comes to real estate, I don't really have a good understanding of the industry itself, but the way that conversation was framed and how it impacts the community around you and how I've definitely seen the impacts of things like gentrification and things like that, and just tying that all together into that's what real estate is a part of was really a good takeaway for me from that conversation as well, besides seeing great examples of leadership on the podcast.
Yeah. And then we talked about words of the year where I had both you and Allison on, and we discussed intentionally setting what we want to do, who we want to be, speaking it into existence, so that we can be held accountable to who we are and what we want to do this year. Because I know we all scribe it down on a notebook or put it on a vision board. And there's something really, I think, amazing and transformational about saying out loud, this is what I'm wanting to have this year embody.
Yeah, I was thinking about that conversation the other day because it, one, feels like it was 3 years ago, and two, I feel like I need to re-listen to that to recenter myself based on everything that's happened since that conversation. That conversation happened early in January. Things happened later in January that kind of impacted our lives. And so I think it's a good reminder for myself to go back and say, what did past me say we were going to do? What did we want to? And I think it just also serves as that reminder of how important that is, whether it is writing it down or speaking it into existence, using voice notes or something like that. To have a record, I think, is really important.
I think for me, I'm still in my release. I still am feeling that word.
You
That word
are.
is still there.
Yeah.
And if anything, I'm realizing right now it's releasing that it has to be that a structure, a similar, like I'm instruction mode right now and deciding how to put things out and what that looks like and releasing this sense of it has to be done this way,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is,
I've been witness to you doing that. You are doing it.
it's like, why are you doing that? You like doing this. Why don't you just do that? I'm going to do that. And as simple as that might sound, it's not.
Yeah, it can be really hard to remember that, like, everything, as they used to say on Whose Line Is It Anyway? Like, the points, the rules are made up and the points don't matter. But it can be hard to remind at least myself of that when, I'm looking at things on social media, or what does things don't matter really mean in 2025?
All right. So when we talk about building community connections through digital storytelling,
Yeah.
I enjoyed my conversation so much with Eugenia
Yeah.
because I felt as though when you see influencers or brands that are using an influencer, or you just are looking at social in general and how people are creating communities in social, whether they sometimes even know that's what they're doing. It's interesting because this whole concept of followers or connections, um, depending on the platform you're on, some people you can see how they engage with the people that they are talking to in a very like real, if you were in my house and we were at a party, or we were in my space and we are actually having a back and forth, versus relationships that can sometimes feel very much show and tell, like I'm showing you, I'm telling you, and there's still some kind of a distance or engagement maybe looks different. So I think for me, when I listened to that conversation back, it was a reminder to be intentional when you choose to tell your story. Also be intentional with how you choose to engage with your listeners, audience, whoever your folks are that are going to be connecting with you. And I always just in my mind think, if this person was in front of me, in a room with me, how would I interact with them? And not try to overcomplicate things with the fact that there's a digital medium.
Yeah, I talk about this when I talk about podcasting with other people as well. Is like, what would you talk about with your best friend? That is the vibe you want to take when you're having any communication in the digital landscape. One other thing that I took from Eugenia's conversation was the importance of looking at data and pivoting based on what you're seeing there. So as you were talking about, as releasing the vision of something having to look a specific way, looking at the data also helps guide us to say either, yeah, this is the way to go, or actually try something else. Like, it's okay to try something else. And so I liked what she had to say about, yes, throw spaghetti at the wall, but also make sure you're watching where the spaghetti is landing and following it down the wall. Basically, like, figure out that path for the spaghetti. And that's what I took away from that, is keep your eye on what's happening as much as you're creating. If even if people aren't leaving comments or engaging, there is still something to learn from how that's like data, right? That's data in
Yeah.
itself.
Yeah, I do. And that things take time to build.
Yes. Yeah.
I think we live in a virality and something going viral or being very And honestly, virality is not sometimes the goal.
You might not want that.
It's actually probably more so a slow and steady build, and a continuous, consistent build is more important than having a spike. Because at least you know what you're building is actually building versus you're doing something to get a reaction or a response. So I did enjoy, I think, listening to how she thinks about digital storytelling and how she used Muni Diaries to learn a lot about, particularly in the early stages of podcasting, early stages of even some of this stuff. So really great episode to listen to. Fear and finding strength in community. So this was my first solo episode. I will say I have never done something like this. So again, facing a fear. And I enjoyed, I think, thinking through how to break this down. My Community Impact Collective, I took it a step further and did a whole presentation on it, talking through what those fears are in a more real way. And what I feel is so important with this episode is that it's going to be there. Acknowledge that it's there. It's actually a protection tool, fears and anxieties and things like that. It's in our mammalianness, in our peoplingness. I think we forget that we're still part of the animal kingdom. It's totally normal to be afraid of things and to feel those very real feelings. It's sometimes determining a danger versus a fear and then what those fears can look like. So I think I'll be doing some more of these from time to time. I just needed to do one first to see what it was like. And we'll see.
I enjoyed it. It was like a little audio essay that you were able to like just lay out some things and give me as a listener to reflect on and go forward with in my life. I was fortunate enough to attend the Community Impact Collective presentation of this as well, and it did go in a lot deeper. I think what I took away from that is, yes, fear is always going to be there. Fear is real. At least for myself, it was like figuring out, what does fear feel like? What is fear for me? Because if you were to ask me, like, are you afraid of something? Like, my brain's first answer is no, but like my body is probably screaming. I just can't feel it. That's just how my nervous system is made up and or was conditioned by life. So I feel like it gave me a little bit of a pause to say, okay, maybe I'm not hearing the fear in my life, and maybe I need to listen to it to help guide me a little bit more. So I enjoyed it. So thank you for putting it together.
Yeah, that was fun. And then we moved to Jennifer Taylor, who she's such a powerhouse, such a dynamic voice, very, I'd say, multi-hyphenate as she describes herself. And so what I enjoyed about having her on and why I asked her on was because I've seen her show up in multiple spaces, and she's always consistently like present. She's always consistently curious. Her community, her Filipino community, is like at the center of her heart and how she shows up in the work that she does. And it's interesting that she called her organization ambiculture when I don't know that people even, at least I had to look up the word and understand what it meant. So it was wonderful to connect with her and see how she uses her cultural intelligence in how she does business, in how she chooses projects, in the organizations she chooses to participate in. Really great story.
Yeah, I loved the exploration of the word ambiculture because I think I have heard so much about multicultural. But what I like about ambiculture is it reminds me of ambidextrous because it's like and when you're ambidextrous, you can switch from right to left-handedness very easily. It's not like you're multi-handed. We're all multi-handed. But most of us are multi-handed. But if you are ambicultural, like there is a switch, like a code switch that happens when you're in different spaces. And I think that can be ignored in conversations when they're framed as multicultural as opposed to ambicultural. So I enjoyed that exploration as well. And as I know Garland and I, we've talked about like our cultural makeups and things that how we show up in different places and how that all comes into play. So I think it was a really good episode. And I thank Jennifer for bringing it to all of us.
Yeah, Rhonda Jackson. So we had behind the scenes so much fun. We had a tech challenge in the midst. I think sometimes when these things happen, it's easy to freak out and be like, oh my gosh. But because we're releasing this year, we are releasing the expectation that it has to look a certain way. We are going to do it anyway. And so I think what I enjoyed about my conversation with her was how she does such a great job of empowering women entrepreneurs. She's also just very much of a community builder. She hosts activations. She's an amazing facilitator at, I don't know, you would call it art therapy, but it feels like that when you go through an exercise with her. And then hearing that she's actively working on her ICF certification, I can totally see it. Coach's certification, that is. I feel like she is going to be doing really great things. We are going to partner with her for an upcoming event in May, and I'm excited to be able to share more of that as that time approaches. But it's really, I think, amazing meeting people and then diving into learning what they do and seeing how their superpowers, their strengths, their things that they're good at can really, for me, it just really opened up an idea of you can, again, do things the way ever you want to do them. It doesn't have to look a certain way. And I think she embodies that so much.
Yeah, this was a conversation that happened when I needed to hear it. It was definitely like, it was like, Marissa, this advice is for you. She's like speaking directly to me at this moment in time based on what I was going through in my business and my life at the moment. So I really did appreciate this episode, and also just seeing like the possibilities of what is she's so multifaceted. She's got so much stuff going on and how she's able to make it work. But one of the things I did take away from that is she cannot do it alone. I am someone that thinks that I have to do it alone sometimes, and basically this episode was like, no, if you want to do something, you cannot do it alone. You need to lean on different people, and you need to lean into your strengths and find people that will hold you up in those other instances. And so often I can lean on, I don't know, like a system or something else, and that can hold you up, but only for so much and only for so far. So it really, my takeaway from that episode was like, okay, Marissa, get your people who are like, really get your people around you, show up for your people, have them show up for you, allow them to show up for you, and see what happens.
Oh, I couldn't have said it better, Marissa. I couldn't have said it better. This is where I come to talk about Community Impact Collective because I believe this so hard. I believe this so hard about finding your people and having them show up for you and asking and allowing people to help you. And we talk all the time about being from the do-it-yourself rule of, I don't want to say overwhelm, but the do-it-yourself school of overwhelm, where you feel like you're having to do it yourself, either through conditioning, family upbringing, immigrant first-generation kids,
Yeah,
very
all
much
of the above.
all of that. And so a big part of why Community Impact Collective is such a thing for me is because I just don't feel like we should be doing anything alone. We should be building businesses together. We should be sharing collective wisdom. We should be sharing our wins and our losses
Yeah.
and our aha moments and keeping accountability for, hey, I really said I was going to do this in the next month. Can you guys keep me accountable to make sure that I deliver? Or, hey, I need this. And I just don't think we ask for help enough. And it's so important. So what I walked away with that conversation is realizing, yeah, we got to keep doing things together.
Yeah, and I've even just to share my CIC story. One of the things that I presented in the community was a podcasting workshop. It was like why starting a podcast is necessary. Like I really do believe in my heart of hearts that everyone has a message, everyone has a story, and I think podcasting is an accessible way of telling the story. So I did a little presentation for community members in CIC, and that presentation, the feedback that I got, the questions that were asked allowed me to take that out of the community and put it up for the public as well. And now it can be like a lead generator. I can do all of this stuff. And I didn't have that before Community Impact Collective. I just would have created it and then shipped it myself. Okay, here you go. Here's the thing. But the questions that everyone asked and the feedback I got on the presentation itself allowed me to make it into something a little bit more targeted, a little bit better to serve the community. And I really value that experience, and it's a safe place to do that. And I think not only is community asking for help, thinking that getting out of the I have to do it myself, but also like I couldn't do that if I didn't show up for myself in that instance. If I didn't say, I have something that I want to share, I have something that I think is valuable. And so I think that's another powerful aspect of community that doesn't get talked about enough is like, you can't just show up in a community, or you can't just be in a community. You have to show up in a community to really get that whole I'm with my people, I'm leaning in with my people, I'm holding people accountable experience.
Yeah. It's not a voyeuristic space.
No, it's not a feat. You're not passively experiencing community. If you really want to say you have a group of people that you can lean on, you have to show up for that to happen. And that I think is reflected in all the stories we heard this season as well, is like no one is really doing this on their own. Everyone has their own communities in which they are showing up for, and then also telling us about what they're receiving back. I think while community is a noun, I think community is much more a verb than anything else.
Community is a verb. It sure is. It totally is. So our final conversation was with I feel like I don't want to call her, we're friends. We're definitely friends. But I definitely feel like because she gave me my first foray of consulting of this is an option and available to you. And when you're working in corporate America, everyone wants to be the vice president or the CFO or the whatever the thing up the ladder is that everyone says you're supposed to want. And you are like, yeah, I don't want that. I don't see that as my path. I don't feel like moving up in leadership is how I'm going to feel actualized.
Yep.
You're looking for something else, which at the time I was. To meet her at the time that I did was so refreshing because I then saw, oh, that's an option. That's an option that I have available to me that I didn't realize was an option. And then how she coaches, how she facilitates, I thought, wow, this is actually possible. And so this is why I had to have her on, one, because I feel like there's another life out there. There's life outside of structures that we have been told are where we need to go in order to make it, whatever making it is.
Yep.
But also, I think the work that she does and that I've seen her do, that I've worked with her in doing, has been, it's so needed. It's so needed, particularly for where we are in the world, but before where we were, like, in light of all of this, even more. But because she's been doing this for 20 years, like, this is not new work. Maybe how we talk about it, maybe where it shows up in an organization may shift depending on the cycles of business, the cycles of how we think about things. But so much of this work is human-based, heart-centered, leadership-oriented, and not leader as in, here's the leader up. Here's the leader. Like, you need to lead yourself. Like, and as a person who decides, how do I want to lead my life? How do I want to show up for myself first, to then have maybe relationships with other people where I'm leading a team or leading a project or leading a whatever. But I don't think we talk about leadership in that way enough. So what I enjoyed about the conversation with her is that we got to deep dive a little into that and talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I so appreciated this conversation as well because Farzana brought like the concept of healing, like it's all human centered, but I experienced a lot of trauma in corporate America. And anytime I try to bring this conversation up around healing and like that I'm more than just what every day, there's a lot going on, there's different things. Why do I have to be the person that changes my communication style? Why can't we all talk about communication styles together? Why can't we make people feel safe so that they can excel? Like these type of things. I was told, Marissa, you're basically like, get out of here. There's no space for that conversation here. We have bigger things to do. We have metrics to chase. We have all of this stuff. And I worked in a variety of different environments, from nonprofit all the way up to enterprise companies and tech companies and things like that. And the conversations were always the same. in that area. So I think the work that Farzana is doing is very needed. I think even as employees, I think not only do leaders have to realize that like they are leading humans, but I think one thing that was important for me when I was an employee in corporate America was reminding myself I also was a human. Like I also have all of this stuff too, and like I can look at like the concept of job trauma didn't exist for the first half of my career. I didn't even realize that that could be a thing that was happening. But of course it could be a thing because I'm human and trauma happens to humans. And so how can I reframe what's happening in my workspace to or my workplace to fuel my own healing and get me to show up. And I really do think that that is what helped me move on to other roles and helped me get to where I am now, is just by realizing the full picture of everything that was going on. Yeah, much needed conversation and great work.
Yes. I don't think we do talk about job trauma enough. I don't think we healing in the workplace, just that word in the workplace, I think is revolutionary, dare I say, out avant-garde. Like we talk about therapy. It's funny, we talk about therapy, right? We love a good therapy. You know, you
And
have your
everyone has,
EAT group that
yes,
offers
exactly.
therapy. You have all of
Your 15 minutes of therapy that you get on us to talk about whatever, but don't tell on the company because otherwise it's going to get back to you. Experience. Yes.
and I don't think we talk enough about the job trauma. I know, honestly, I think that's how I met you, was because
Yes.
I had experienced job trauma. At that
Yeah.
point, my first like experience with it. And initially I thought I was going, I don't want to say crazy, but it was more one of those, are you making this up in your head type of thing?
Yep.
And it wasn't until I read a book by Minda Harts called The Memo
Oh.
that she essentially put words to an experience that I was like, oh, is that what's
Yeah.
great? This is a thing.
This is a
This is a
thing.
thing.
This is a thing.
And then I went and found out that there is it's called Pet to Thread when you're a woman of color and you for
Oh.
space where
Yeah, that makes
initially
sense.
you come in and you are the best thing. They're so excited. They recruited you. They want you. You're amazing. You're going to be the second coming, right? And
Yep.
you show up and you're like, oh my gosh, this is fantastic. People want me here. I feel like I belong. You want to hear my ideas. You start to do your work of sharing things. You start uncovering, I call it uncovering the dysfunction, digging it up, because in your mind, that's your job. Like,
That's what
I'm
you're
here
here to
to
do.
do something. I'm here to change something. I'm here to create something. Like, you brought me in to build, right? This is what you told me. And then
Yep.
as you continue to unearth all of the things and make suggestions and want to redo, and you start to see, oh, there's some things here that aren't working. There's some people here actually keeping this place stuck. And you start to bring these things to light, suddenly everything starts to repel back on you. And
Yep.
suddenly, you're not helpful. People are gaslighting you. Your manager's not thinking you're the best thing that ever showed up.
Yep.
Suddenly everyone thinks that you're everything but a child of God, okay? And then you start thinking, is it me? Wait, all of the things that are coming are telling me, and then you come to realize someone's either threatened by the fact that you are doing
Finding
something,
these things, saying these things, unearthing these things.
and they're actively sabotaging you, actively not working with you, possibly even starting a coup. That's a whole thing when you're the manager.
That
Suddenly they
happens.
start talking, everyone's talking about you, and no one's having a real conversation. So when she was talking about we don't tell people the truth, we swallow the truth, for me, when I heard that, it was like, yeah, we're not having real feedback conversations. We're not having real conversations saying, this is what because we prefer to do passive aggressive, whatever.
The amount of filters that I had to have on for communication when I found myself in that part of the journey of the, okay, I've unearthed some stuff. I've decided to be vocal about it. Eek thing. It's like I have to think of the 800 different perspectives that are going to read this. I have also I've been copied on emails I should not have been copied on that had to do with me, that personally talked about me. But when I called them out on doing that, then I was gaslighted into thinking that I was the person that was wrong. And I was like, I didn't put my name on the CC line. I didn't do these things. And there comes a point where when you haven't had those real conversations, you can't have those real conversations. And it just deteriorates and there's no way forward. So I think, again, bringing this human-centered conversation about what it's like to be in a workplace is really important, because now more than ever are people bringing their whole selves to work. I think after 2020, and especially with the return to work, like, people are not separating. There is no, like, I don't want to say there is no work-life balance, but there is no work-life separation. I want to say everything is happening together, and it has been that way. We just haven't really formally recognize that. I don't know a working parent that has ever been able to really separate work from family. I am not a working parent. I just have seen working parents. What are you going to do? Not pick up the phone when your kid calls? How are you
I
going to
told
do
you
those
between
things?
8 and 5, don't
Yeah.
call me. No matter
Yeah.
if you're sick and vomiting, no matter what's happening at that school, I can't take your call.
And you might be in a privileged position where you can have someone else pick up the phone. But for most people, there is not that separation. For that, I remember there was a story of Valerie Jarrett and Michelle Obama. And Valerie Jarrett would always say, no matter what happens, if my kid calls, like, we are interrupting everything. And Valerie Jarrett moved up in the administration. She was a big time player in the Obama administration. And no matter when her daughter called, she picked up the phone. And I just thought that was a beautiful example of how you can't separate. We are who we are in every
100%.
moment.
100%. No, it's work-life integration. It's not balanced. It's never been balanced. I think once I started working remotely or having the ability to do hybrid work, particularly when my daughter was younger, I wanted to be at the recital. I wanted to be
Yeah.
at the thing because I had a working parent who unfortunately couldn't be at a lot of things. And it is, I think, not, I don't think at the time when I was younger, I just knew she was a working parent and I knew she wasn't going to be there. So I didn't take it any type of way. But it's nice to look out into an audience and see somebody that's your person in the audience to do the thing. And having now had the opportunity to be in the audience for many things, I see my kid looking for me. And I feel good after the performance to give her such a great job. This is what it means to raise humans. Another thing.
Checked, we are still humans, right? Like, last time I checked, I know evolution happens. We could be moving on to something else, but we're in that. All of us on this planet right now are currently the same species. So I will take it. All
Yeah.
of us humans, at least.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, no. And I think there's going to be more conversations around. I think what I love about having guests like Farzana on is because I think about this stuff all the time, which is why I do consulting with her, because I think that it's very easy to shut off something, or people just think you can turn a switch. I don't know very many people that are turning switches off anymore. If anything, the switches are on and the lights are lighting up.
What
If
time
you
do
don't
have?
see them, they're there anyway. And so if you are going to lead people, you're going to be in community with them, you're going to be on a team with them, it's best to understand that there are lights, see the lights, ask about the lights, talk about whether the people need breaks, talk about if the people are needing a moment, a pause, or whatever, because we're not robots. We're not
Yeah.
AI.
If you really if you really want to get into it, watch Severance on Apple TV and see what happens when, you do try to separate the two different personas of your innie and your outie, and it's not as clean. They can't even do it. They can't even do it. There's an artistic representation out there as well. This is definitely something that is in the cultural zeitgeist that people are talking about and thinking about, and I think it does impact how people show up in all of their different spaces.
Yeah. Okay. As I close season 1, I will be putting out a playlist. Okay. This is, I think, if you know nothing, music is going to be a thing. I asked each guest what was the song that made them feel like they were energized and in community. We got some really good suggestions. So I'll be putting a playlist in the show notes so that you can go and listen to all of our guests' amazing fun songs, interesting songs that they've put together. I also will, I'd say in the season 2, we are going to maybe try some new things. I'm in the process of thinking about, again, releasing and doing things differently and figuring out how we can continue to expand this platform in a larger way, and just keep your ears and your eyes open, because we will definitely be letting subscribe to the newsletter if you have not subscribed, because this week I did a What Black History Means to Me in 2025, which I think is just good stuff. It's around Black joy. It's around resistance. It's around tapping into your authentic self. And so if you haven't signed up for the newsletter, please do, because I will continue to do monthly musings, things that make me decide I turn into a keyboard warrior and have to say something about it. I also will up Community Impact Collective. So the free option will be closing at the end of this month. So that is definitely going to be happening. And then we had to reschedule our screening because California weather, when it doesn't rain, is amazing. But when it does, it's like equivalent to snow somewhere else. Flash flood warnings and who knows what else is going to happen in our fire after water or water after fire situation. So safety first always. So reschedule that. And so I'll be putting out information on the next date for that for March. But this has been a fantastic season. I have enjoyed getting back into this space. I thank you for joining me on the journey.
Yeah, of course. Before we go though, Garland, I have one question for you. How are you reimagining your place in community after a season of ReImagining Community?
Ooh, how I'm reimagining my place is how can I continue to expand this platform to reach bigger audiences, to uplift organizations that are doing this work, to infuse some of the, I think, strategy and the placemaking and the culture building that I enjoy doing. So that is how I'm reimagining community right now. Are you going to ask me for a song?
You have to put your song in the playlist.
I have to put my song. So I love soca music, okay? Soul Calypso is what it's called. If you're from the Caribbean, whether that's by way of Caribbean sea side of Latin America or the actual islands sitting in the Caribbean, you will find soca music is typically carnival music. Okay? So I love carnival. I haven't been to carnival in a minute. I should go soon because I feel like it's needed. But you have to be ready for carnival energy because it is intense. But my carnival song that I love, so many, but the one that I am thinking about is Togetherness. It's a song by Allison Hines, and it says, "Jump and let them see, love and unity, one big family, togetherness."
Aww.
And that is the lyric. And you put people in the streets, they've got and it's just a sea of people and they're just jumping together and waving. It's a whole vibe, okay? People energy dancing is my vibe. And so I love that song.
I can, totally brought you to life. I can't wait to listen to it on the playlist. Thank you so much for sharing, and it's been such a great journey throughout the season.
If this conversation moved you, don't keep it to yourself. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because every week we're bringing you more stories of real transformation. Drop a comment, share your thoughts, and tag the folks in your circle who need to hear this. Want to go deeper? Check out the Community Impact Collective. Sign up for my newsletter. The link is in the description. Now is the time. Are you in?
Pardon my dog.
Poppy
He's talking to the dog across the street. This is a real podcast, people. We have
Yes.
things happening in the back. They're cutting trees outside of my house today. So as a result of cutting trees, there's more passing movement than normal. So my protective four-legged friend here, Poppy, wants to let everyone know she's here, and
Thank you,
she's not here
Poppy.
for all this. So we're gonna possibly edit this out.
We'll
but
figure it out. We'll figure it out.